Welcome to the Athlete Brand Advisor Podcast, featuring advice and interviews about athlete branding. Learn how marketing, public relations, and broadcasting can grow your brand. We also have special episodes to talk about recent news, events, and anything in the world of sports. The podcast is sponsored by Pliable, a versatile marketing, PR, and broadcasting company that identifies opportunities and creates tailored content for its clients. Now it's time to roll. Here's your host, Greg Glynn.
Thanks, and welcome to the Athlete Brand Advisor Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking with a man who knows all about nutrition and protein bars. It's going to be James Oliver, founder of Atlas Bars, and we're glad to welcome James here to the podcast today. He's going to talk about his journey of starting the company Atlas from the ground up, and he's got a great story to tell. We always talk about athlete branding and telling your story, and James is going to give us a very good story here today. James, welcome into the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Greg. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be exciting because, of course, there's so many athletes that are looking for, different types of protein bars or drinks and shakes. The market is, as you know, very busy, as we like to say, with all kinds of different products. You guys focus a lot on kind of this clean label concept, which is great. But let's talk about how you first got started in the, business and entrepreneurial space.
Yeah, so the origin of how I got interested in food actually goes way, way back before I started the company. I was always very taken with the idea, like when I first realized that, your body is kind of like a car, and the difference between your body and a car is that you can make certain choices with your body. You can exercise, you can eat certain ways, and you can actually improve what your body is capable of. And I thought about it like, you could go from, like, imagine if you had like a Honda Civic and you were able to, through like the choices you made, you could turn it into like a Porsche. And that's kind of is what you can do with your body. Like, you can go from not being able to run a single mile to being able to run a marathon. You can make certain decisions that dramatically impacts what your body is capable of doing. And any athlete knows this is the purpose of training. So I was always really interested that from a young age, and that interest led me into really just following my own curiosity into nutrition, especially because there were so many, when I was growing up in like the 2000s, there's just so many kind of misconceptions and conflicting information when it came to nutrition. Like, one in particular that I remember that like fats at the time were very demonized, like fats were bad, stay away from fats. And on the other hand, I remember vegetables and like fruit and vegetables, like those are good. And then I remember thinking like, well, what about an avocado? Because an avocado is filled with fat, but it's technically a fruit. So where does that put it? So is it bad or is it good? And I was like, okay, there's clearly more to unpack here. I don't think that we really have a great understanding about nutrition science because there's so much conflicting information. Even since then, like butter has gone from margarine used to be kind of preferred, and now margarine's out and butter's back, and eggs used to be out and now eggs are back. And so really just to satisfy my own curiosity and to understand what was what, I just really dove into understanding nutrition better. And that ultimately led years later to me starting a business in food.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the athlete side of it. Talk to me about how you got into the athlete space, or, your experience, obviously, as somebody who has trained or, was relying on your food as fuel.
So I grew up playing a lot of different sports. The two primary ones that I played football and lacrosse. And then when I went to college, I started doing more like endurance things. And I liked pushing my mind and my body. And I liked that with endurance, like ultra endurance in particular, when you're doing like 20, 30, 40 miles, it really becomes more of a mental challenge as much as a physical one. And so throughout all of that, you obviously have to be very dialed with what you're putting into your body, because if you fuel wrong, it doesn't really matter what else you do. You could really kind of shoot yourself in the foot before you even start. So for Atlas, and where that comes in is, I was just looking for something that was clean ingredient that I could feel good about eating every single day without any like hesitation in the back of your mind. You're like, well, this seems like it has good protein, doesn't have a lot of sugar, but I feel like there are certain ingredients in here that I probably shouldn't be eating on on a daily basis. And I really just wanted something that was as close to real food as possible, but that had the nutrition that I really needed, that I felt that I needed in order for my body to kind of be at its best. And that was a lot of protein, not a lot of sugar. And
Mm.
one thing that I should say about that is that these are mainly for when you're either refueling or in between sessions or activity, but because they are lower in sugar, if you are an athlete, if you are doing something that is active and kind of metabolically costly, you do need sugar a lot of times to fuel that activity.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's not sugar isn't necessarily bad. It's just that it's overconsumed in a country where if you're largely sedentary, you don't need a lot of it because you're not doing a lot of taxing activities. But if you're an athlete, you really can use it and you should use it as a tool for fueling whatever you're doing. So Atlas is really for like the 90% of your day that you're not training.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And obviously, recovery has become such a hot topic. As Massachusetts guys ourselves, obviously, Tom Brady was one of the best at it. And you know what he put into his body and how long his career lasted. Talk to me a little bit about, building this company and then when you started to figure out like, how are we going to do this and how are we going to be different?
Yeah, I think one thing that I had as an advantage is that I was a huge consumer of the category. So because I was a
Mm.
huge consumer of the category, like in college, I was eating pure protein bars. I think in high school, I was eating like Cliff Builders bars. So
Yeah.
I had really consumed like kind of everything. And because I had consumed everything, the reason that I started this really initially was to make it for myself because I was like, I know what's out there and I know that this thing doesn't exist because if it did, then I would just buy that, but
Yeah.
it doesn't exist. So I guess I'm just gonna make it. And honestly, the logic that I used to start was like, okay, I'm gonna make 5,000 bars. And the absolute worst case scenario is that nobody buys them and that I'll be stuck having to eat 5,000
5,000
bars.
bars of
And I
bars
was
you
like,
like.
yeah, and I was like, I'm completely fine with that outcome. Like that is perfectly okay with me. So I started I actually still was in school when I started kind of putting the bones of the company together. So I went to Tufts in Boston area
Yeah.
and I was entering my last year of school and I was like, okay, I want to do something challenging after I graduate. This time in my life is going to be the time that I have kind of the least amount of obligations. So if I'm going to take a risk like this, then now's the time to do it. And I'm ready to just kind of go all in. And I don't even know what that means, all in, but I'm ready to commit myself to it. So I spent my senior year kind of putting the business plan together, and I ended up formulating throughout the course of the year. I made the 5,000 bars. I found a manufacturer that could help me make them. They got delivered to me like a week after I graduated, and then I remember looking at the bars in my parents' dining room and just being like, I somehow I have to sell these. Somehow I have to
Right.
sell these. And
It's probably
then
like
that's where
like
it started.
the Girl Scouts probably feel like when all the boxes of cookies arrive at the
Yeah,
house, right? And they're like,
exactly.
I gotta
Yeah.
sell all these now,
They're like, oh my
like
God, I
yeah.
have to sell how many caramel delights?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and then I also understand how you went basically to funding this company involving driving for Uber.
Yeah, yeah. So right after graduating, I was living in Boston, and I would get up at like 4 in the morning, and I would drive Uber. I was training initially when I first started. I was training for an ultra marathon too, so I would get up
Wow.
sometimes even earlier. I would run for a couple of hours, and then I would get in the car, and then I would start driving from like 5 to 9, whatever the rush was in
Right. Yep.
Boston.
Yep. Yeah.
And then at 9, I would start to kind of work on the business throughout the middle of the day when it worked out pretty well because the kind of high times for Uber are like they straddle kind of rush hour. And so that
Yep.
leaves you the middle of the day to do other stuff. So I would go to gyms and I would basically like be like, hey, I have this bar. Would you be interested in letting me sample it to your customers? And then I would do that for the bulk of the day. And then on the tail end of the day, I would go back to Ubering
Back in the
and
car.
then
Yeah.
yeah, and then just put all of that back into the company. So it was
Wow.
definitely a grind, but as I said, that's what I kind of wanted.
Yeah. Now, how long do you think it took kind of for you? I mean, this is a pretty amazing story when you really think about it. How long have you been in business and what are some of your plans for growth?
We've been in business now for I think 7 years, and I'll say that it it's gone through like so many different phases. Like I remember, I think I was 23 or so, and it was at that time the company was doing over a million, like probably $1.5 million in sales. It was just me and the company, and I still really didn't even think of it as like a legitimate business. It's kind of weird, but I was just like, this is still this thing that I just made, and it just happens to be like I happen to be
Popular.
selling a lot of them. So I've learned such a tremendous amount, and we've gone through so many different like evolutions. And I will say, I think that's been a perspective that's been really helpful that I think athletes can relate to, which is that you always have to be evolving and you always have to be getting better in some aspect. And the moment that you just say, okay, I've made it, like I'm good, I don't have to do anything else, I think is the moment that you start moving backwards because even though you might be at a great spot, others are going to continue to work and they're going to continue to progress. And if you're not, then you're gonna fall behind. And it's the exact same way in any kind of company. And so for us, that means just constantly working on the product, working on, okay, how can we communicate better to the people we're trying to reach? And also it's also similar to like being an athlete. Like imagine you're playing football, you have to read the defense in order to understand like what the best play to run. It's not just about a play that you can run well, but it's about, okay, where's the defense going to be? How can I react in relation to them? And that's kind of what you have to do with where like the market is. So for instance, like keto was very big for a couple of
Yeah,
years. And so
yeah,
you
yeah,
have to like react to that and be like, okay, how do we position ourselves to take advantage of where the market is? And
yeah.
then like right now, seed oils, like no seed oils is like kind of a big topic, or like more protein is a big topic. So it is very similar to athletics where you're like, okay, how do I position myself
Yeah.
relative to like the landscape in order to maximize the opportunity? So to answer your question of like where are we growing from here, there's a lot of opportunity with where our product is and where I think the landscape is now. And yeah, I think there's a lot of exciting things that we can do from here.
Yeah. Well, certainly the landscape that everyone is familiar with here on the podcast is NIL, and how you get your product to market, and athletes now as influencers, ambassadors, and promoting products and services. Um, Talk to me a little bit about how you may dive into that market a little bit, or what would be certainly appealing when you think about NIL for Atlas.
Yeah, I think the most important thing with any kind of partnership that we have is that the person who is the potential partner is somebody who's a genuine user and fan of the product. And I think that that's so important, both for them and for the company, because authenticity now is just it's just kind of so demanded by people. They want people who are saying, "Hey, I use this product, but I use it because I'm not just saying I use this because the camera's on. I actually use this in my everyday life." And so the way that I think about it is not necessarily as much as marketing, but just finding people who are like, "Hey, this is actually a great product, and I would love to share this with other people because I truly stand behind this product. Like this is a great product." And I know that's might be a little bit of a different approach, but given what Atlas stands for, and
Mm,
we're kind of science based, we're based in truth and basically just being very clear, like, hey, this doesn't have a lot of sugar, it's got clean ingredients, it's got high protein. Like we don't try to hide anything. Having people that are kind of aligned with that matters a lot. And yeah, I think it's a really exciting time for NIL. Like it's just a completely new world, and I think it's great that college athletes now have the opportunity to pursue all these different opportunities that previously weren't available to them.
Let's talk about availability for your product. Where can people find Atlas bars, and how have you kind of gotten to market? What's kind of your, go to market right now, or what are some of the big things you've done along the way, for your company to get it into the hands of people?
So the most common place that people get us is online or through Amazon. So through our website,
Mm,
atlasbars.com, or through Amazon. We're also on Walmart online. We have thought about going deeper into more stores, but I'd like us to get a bit bigger before doing that because that's a completely different game. And it's from a consumer standpoint, you don't really realize this until you're kind of on the other side and in the business. But it's actually not that hard to get your product on a shelf at a store. It's not that hard to say, okay, I want this grocery store to carry my product, but it's a lot harder to get it off the shelf, meaning it's the work starts once it's on the shelf and you have to get people to go buy it. So it's much harder to get people to go into the store. And in any given grocery store, I think there's an average of like 40,000 products or something like that. So how is a person who has limited time, limited
Yeah.
attention, how are you going to get them out of the 40,000 products to go to yours on the shelf and pull it off? So it's a completely different game. And I think the brands that I've seen do very well, you kind of go there once you've reached a maturity point that allows you to go there.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Good stuff. So, as obviously you continue to grow, we'll certainly keep an eye on you and what you're doing. I think it's fantastic. I think a lot of the athletes that listen to this podcast who are looking for that low sugar, high protein option, definitely check it out. It's atlasbars.com. James, you've been terrific here on the podcast. Obviously, you've got great customer service, and you've got a great product. So continued success to you, and thanks for coming on.
I appreciate it, Greg. Thank you.
All right. I'm Greg Glynn. We're glad you could tune in. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Athlete Brand Advisor Podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes from today's episode and catch up on recent episodes at pliablemarketing.com. We also encourage you to share topics and guest ideas by emailing our production staff at pliablemarketing@gmail.com. We love hearing from our loyal listeners and athletes who want to grow their brand. So jump in and be part of the podcast because that's how we roll.